Yeah, this is a pretty crazy story to me. At one time, the passenger pigeon was the most abundant bird on the planet. There were billions of them, and they ranged all around various parts of North America. And they were essentially overhunted, and then their population collapsed. I believe the last passenger pigeon, there's no dispute about this one, was died in a zoo in 1914. So it's incredible to me that the most abundant bird species out there could go from flocks of billions all the way to zero in a pretty short amount of time.
Support the show and check out all things Unexplained at bigfootufo.com.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's.
Did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions?
As humans busied themselves about the various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied.
Dr. Loeb, what percentage chance do you give it that you have indeed uncovered extraterrestrial or non-human technology?
With infinite complacence, people went about their affairs, yet across an immense ethereal gulf, intellects vast and unsympathetic threw their plans against us.
Prior to your abduction, did you believe in UFOs or any sort of alien life form?
All things unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to All Things Unexplained. I am CJ Derringer, joined by my co-host, Dr. Mounts. We've got Noah Strycker on the show.
So look, next we've got, here's some, are these baby, these must be juveniles, right?
Yeah, you got it. Those are baby emperor penguins. Emperors are the biggest penguins. If you've ever seen the movie Happy Feet,
yes.
This is Mumble from Happy Feet, basically. They are super cute. I think they are the cutest baby penguins because they have that black and white pattern on their head. But they're really hard to see. You have to go usually at the very beginning of the Antarctic summer in November, before the sea ice is really broken up, because they nest during the winter, which is of course opposite from the northern hemisphere winter. And then by the time we get there in November, they already have these big chicks. And then as the ice breaks up in December, then the chicks are ready to go off on their own then. And even to get to the places where emperor penguins nest, you usually have to have an icebreaker ship to get there, which is what I was on when I took this photo. I was on a Russian icebreaker with helicopters on it just to access this spot. Or you can fly in a couple of places and land with a plane on skis on the sea ice, which I'll be doing again in November this coming season. I can't wait to go see the emperor penguins again. They are just super cute.
Exciting.
And it really does look just like straight out of the movie. The what is it called again?
Happy Feet. Happy Feet.
Yeah,
I gotta say, it was
they're just dancing all around.
Pretty accurately done. I mean, aside from maybe the singing and the dancing, which they don't necessarily do.
Yeah.
All of the species that were in that movie were depicted really accurately, and the backgrounds were actually real places. They were portraying the different animals in their real habitats, doing things that they would normally be doing, more or less. And so I think it was really well done.
Wasn't there also a documentary about emperor penguins that was narrated by Morgan Freeman? Do I have that right?
Yes, March of the Penguins.
March
of
yes.
That was
fantastic.
Amazing. Yeah, it's still well worth watching. I think it was just about the highest grossing documentary of all time, at least when it was done.
Yeah, it was great.
And is this 3 emperor penguins we're looking at here, Noah? 2 adults and a...
Yep, you got it. That's an emperor penguin family. So mom and dad and their one chick.
Oh, very cool. And how tall is an adult emperor penguin? They're pretty tall, aren't they?
They're pretty tall. Yeah, they're a little over 4 feet tall. So they come up to just about the middle of my chest. And they can weigh like 50 to almost 100 pounds.
How do they feel about humans when you guys are there studying them? Are they open to you or apprehensive?
Oh, they are super curious. Emperor penguins don't have predators on land like most penguins don't. They just have never evolved to be scared of anything outside of the ocean. So when they're on the ice near their colony, they see you and they're like, oh, who are you? Like they come up to you and they stand right next to you and they'll go to sleep right at your feet and they'll even like preen the side of your pants and untie your shoelaces. And they're just very
wow.
entertained by having guests in their colony.
That's
And
super cool. Because
Speaking of guests, sorry, did I see
No,
on
go
your
ahead.
website that you were taking people on expeditions last year to go see penguins, or did I misread that?
Yeah, that's right. And I'll be doing that again this coming Antarctic season, which starts in November. It's by plane and by ship.
Podcast
Can anybody
retreat,
go? You
CJ.
can. I know you. You could just sign up and pay to go, or how do you get qualified for that?
Yeah, these are either a small ship type of expedition that leaves from a little city called Ushuaia in southern Argentina and then goes south to Antarctica. That's a really good way to do it if you want to visit Antarctica. That's how most people go. If you want to see emperor penguins, you probably need to take a more specialized expedition because, as I said, they're kind of on remote parts of Antarctica, so you don't usually see them on the ship-based trips unless you have an icebreaker. So for the camp that I'll be going to in November, we actually fly a chartered 757 jet from southern Chile across the Drake Passage and land on a glacier in the interior of Antarctica, and then transfer to a small ski plane, a Twin Otter with skis, for another 4 hours across an ice shelf, and then land on the frozen surface of the Weddell Sea, very far south. And they set up some mountaineering tents that you sleep in on the ice with the ocean below you, and penguins just walking around in camp all the time. It's kind of weird to be sleeping in your sleeping bag at night when it's 20 below zero, but you're all cozy in your tent, and all you can hear outside is all these penguin footsteps as they wander around your camp.
Oh, that's so fun.
And it's so interesting you said that about how they have no predators on land, because I think it would be a little intimidating coming up and getting close to such a big wild animal. You know, that would be a little frightening at first, I think. But Noah, maybe you could clear up some potential misconceptions for our listeners real quick, just with these things here: North Pole, South Pole, penguins, polar bears.
Yeah, penguins south, polar bears north, and not vice versa. So the two shall never meet.
Okay.
Amazing, because I really feel like a lot of people think polar bears are in the South Pole too, and that penguins are also in the North Pole.
Yeah, no, it would be if you tried to introduce polar bears to Antarctica, because they're sort of threatened by climate change. People are sometimes like, well, we should put them in Antarctica where there's a lot more snow and ice and they'll be really happy. Either they wouldn't know what to do and they would just starve, or probably more likely, they would just annihilate all the penguins because the penguins don't have any reflex for being scared of predators on shore. So I don't think it would go that well.
Right. And is their main predator in the water, is it killer whales?
Yeah, killer whales will go after a penguin every now and then, although for a killer whale, a penguin is pretty small. So they tend to specialize more on other prey in Antarctica. There's also a type of seal in Antarctica called a leopard seal, and that's the main predator of penguins in the ocean. Leopard seals are maybe, I don't know, they're like 6, 8, 10 feet long and super strong and amazing swimmers, and they'll sit just slightly submerged off the beach near penguin colonies and try to grab them as they go into the water. Once they're out in the open water and swimming around, penguins are amazing swimmers. No seal is really a match for them on the wing underwater, but it's more of an ambush. And then when the seal grabs a penguin, they just try to thrash it until they turn it inside out.
I recall seeing that on that documentary.
And this is a super cool picture. It almost reminds me of Death Valley of somewhere that you're at, Noah.
Yeah, this is actually in Oregon. This is called the Alvord Desert, and it's in southeast Oregon. It's a sort of an extension of the Basin and Range province of Nevada that juts up into southeast Oregon. And you have alkali flats. It's almost like the salt flats that people race on. In fact, people do race out there every now and then in eastern Oregon as well. However, in the background, just on the left side of the photo, that's where the outlet of a hot springs is that's quite popular. And for me, The draw of the hot spring is that it then spills its outflow onto the playa, and it is perfect shorebird habitat. So if you go out there during fall migration in mid to late August, you can see shorebirds as they're migrating from the Arctic all the way down to Central and South America, and they make a stop there so that they can load up on kelp flies, brine flies that are out there on the playa. And so it's a fun birding spot. It's not where you would normally think of going to look for birds.
Very cool. We're talking to birding expert Noah Strycker, and this is an amazing picture. I have to describe it as best I can. We're looking at a penguin of unknown age, and he has this pattern around his face. It's like a circular mask, black line, and it just, I don't know. It makes his face, makes him look like he's smiling or something.
Yeah, this is called a chin strap penguin.
Chin strap.
Obvious
There you
reasons,
go.
And I think it looks like they're wearing a little helmet, like they're ready for action.
Yes.
That's it. Like he's ready to go march into battle.
Like one of those
Yeah,
motorcycle
well,
helmets, you know.
And it kind
just
of
like-
fits their personality, actually. Chin straps are super aggressive and cantankerous penguins.
Oh.
And for my master's degree, I was doing field work with them. So I had to walk through their colonies to get, details on their nesting habits. And they will beat you up. They're only like 2.5 feet tall, but their flippers are so strong. Penguin wings are called flippers because they use them to swim, and they'll just whack you in the shin, and even through insulated boots and ski pants and everything, they can bruise you up. Those are hardcore little penguins.
Wow.
That's
So it's
hysterical.
a close-up of a chin strap penguin. Very cool. And this is a cool picture, a penguin of some sort in silhouette here. It looks like sunset.
Yep, that's another chin strap. That's on the shoreline of a different island off Antarctica called Elephant Island, which is where Shackleton's men were marooned for a few months in 1915, is probably why that island is famous. But it has quite a few thousand nesting chinstrap penguins on it, and so that was a scenic one at sunset.
I may be wrong, but was Shackleton the one that flew down there?
Well, Shackleton had this idea. First of all, he wanted to be the first person to make it to the South Pole. But then these other explorers made it there first, Amundsen and Scott. So in 1915, Shackleton put together an expedition that said, well, okay, but no one has ever actually walked all the way across the continent of Antarctica yet, from one side to the other via the South Pole. So that's what he set out to do. But it was a massive failure because they never even made it to Antarctica. Their ship got stuck in the sea ice on the way and sank. And then his whole story was of their men trying to extricate themselves from floating around on pack ice over the next few months. And it's actually a pretty gripping tale. There's a book called Endurance that tells the whole long saga. It's one of the greatest survival stories of all time.
Oh, cool. And I would be remiss, if I didn't ask, Noah, all the times you've been to Antarctica, I feel like you're the best person to answer this question. Have you ever seen evidence of underground alien bases in Antarctica?
I love the questions you ask. These are not the questions I normally get about Antarctica, and things I have not necessarily considered in depth. So I have not personally seen evidence of underground bunkers underneath the ice, although given the extent and volume of the Antarctic ice sheet, there's room for whole civilizations down there. Who knows?
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
We'll take that as a possibility. We're going to ask that you look next time. Just change your focus slightly.
We get asked to do shows on Antarctica, but not about penguins. We get asked to do because, rumor has it this military guy, he flew an expedition down there, found a giant cave, goes underground, went in there. It was big enough for him to fly his plane into. Maybe there were alien bases under there. So there's a lot of stuff happening in Antarctica in terms of the paranormal world. So we just had to find out for sure. You've been there so many times. So just keep that in mind the next time you go. And here's one of my favorite pictures. This is just an amazing picture. It's Noah Strycker, full winter gear here, like, the hikers at Tunguska,
and you still don't look warm enough.
Yeah, that was a chilly day.
It looks like full blizzard conditions, and he's
pretty
surrounded by hundreds, thousands of penguins.
This is a place called Brown Bluff on the eastern side of the Antarctic Peninsula, and it's one of the biggest Adelie penguin colonies. So Adelies, you can just see in the background, they're entirely black and white. They don't have any other yellow or orange color on them. And they are, I would say, probably the most charismatic penguins because, like I was talking about the emperors that will come up to you and sort of hang out with you, the Adelies, their reaction to us is what I would think my reaction would be if I did see an alien suddenly land on the ice in Antarctica. They look at us like, who are you? Where did you come from? Like, they have no frame of reference because we just essentially drop in from outer space as far as they're concerned. And so they seem super excited to see us, and they run up and they like run around us and check us out from every angle and just follow you around for hours at a time and just want to like totally soak up the experience of being with this extraterrestrial that suddenly landed in the middle of their nesting colony.
That's awesome. We appreciate that analogy too.
Absolutely. Let's hope when real aliens land, they're just as kind and benevolent as Noah is.
Yes.
Yeah, I would hope so.
That's great. So Noah, you have been so many places. I mean, I am blown away by your knowledge of birds and locations. It seems like everything we've asked you, you've had an answer to, which is incredible. Is there anywhere that you haven't been yet that you're wanting to go, and why?
Oh, for sure. I think the thing with traveling in general is the more places you go, the more places you then start to realize are out there that you haven't visited and you hear about and you want to go to. So, I've got a whole list of countries and habitats and places I'd love to go see. When I did my big year, I saw 6,000 of the world's birds in 1 year, which was pretty monumental. And people are like, wow, that's great. You've done a lifetime of birding. And I'm like, well, no, actually, I only did 1 year and I still have the rest of my lifetime left to go fill in the gaps because somehow I happened to miss 4,000 birds along the way.
Yes.
And so now I can go start tracking them down. I think right now, my top places that I have not personally been that I would love to visit would be Guyana in Northeast South America. Is pretty wild and remote and just covered with rainforest still. And there's some cool birds there that I haven't seen. In Southern Africa, I'd love to go to Namibia. I've heard amazing things about the desert in Namibia. There's about 20 endemic species of birds too that I could find there. I'd love to go to Mongolia. I just have always had this probably romanticized vision of the Mongolian steppe. I love desolate, wide open kinds of places. And I would also really like to get to some of the other subantarctic islands that I haven't visited yet, particularly around New Zealand, south of New Zealand. Because there are still 5 penguins that I haven't found yet that all live over on that side of the world. And so someday I've got to get to those remote islands and see them.
Other than those 5 species of penguins, is there any bird that has just evaded you that you've tried to find over the years and you have yet to find?
Well, birders talk about having a nemesis bird, which is just what you said, a bird that you've looked for, that you've put some effort into, that you should have seen, but you've just never managed to connect with. I think in the Arctic, my nemesis bird is a type of gull, a small species of gull called a Ross's gull, which is actually super cute. It's got this pink color on its chest and a little line around its throat, kind of like the chinstrap penguin. They live in pack ice in the Arctic. They're super nomadic. I've just never seen one. So one of these days, maybe I'll catch up with the Ross's gull. But here in Oregon, for many years, I had a nemesis bird, which a lot of people have laughed at. On the West Coast, the common grackle is a rare species, which in most of the rest of the US, they're like common trash birds, like they're all over your backyard. But here in Oregon, we don't really get common grackles. And so when someone reported one near my house, I ran out to try to find it. And I parked my car and I sprinted into this marsh where they'd reported this common grackle and I couldn't find it. I got back to my car that afternoon. My window had been smashed and like all my tennis gear and other stuff that I had in my car had been stolen, which I never got back. So I was kind of invested in this grackle at that point. And then I got back home and the person who had reported it on the rare bird alert had then posted a photo, and it was of a very common bird called a brewer's blackbird. So it wasn't even a common grackle. And then over the next few years, I chased several more common grackles and didn't have my car broken into, but didn't see them either. And so finally, 2 years ago, common grackle showed up on a golf course in Sun River in Central Oregon in the dead of winter. And I drove over there it was like a 3-hour drive one way to go walk around a golf course in December and try to see a bird that's dirt common everywhere except Oregon. And finally I saw my common grackle. So nemesis no more.
That dedication. I'm glad that you got to see that bird. That's awesome. And I watched your TED Talk. Maybe you've given more than one, so I'll say I watched one of your TED Talks, and I absolutely loved how you opened it. You showed this picture where, of course, all of us looked at the polar bears, right? And you said something along the lines of, it's not common that anybody gets to see this type of, rare species, and we're all thinking polar bear, but you were talking about a bird that was in the picture by the polar bear. What type of bird was that you caught in that picture?
Yeah, that was a type of Arctic gull as well, called an ivory gull. Actually, the best way to find an ivory gull is to find a polar bear with a seal kill on the sea ice, because they usually come in to scavenge the scraps. But yeah, spectacular photo of a mama polar bear and 2 cubs, and I was super excited about the 2 little ivory gulls down in the corner.
Yeah. Well, I highly recommend that TED Talk for anybody that's wanting to get more of Noah Strycker. And also he has a new book out called Birding Basics for anybody that's looking to learn a little bit more about how to get started in the birding world. For those that are interested in bird watching or learning more about birds, you've done this your whole life. You grew up wanting to do this. Is this something that people can make a career out of?
That maybe has been the greatest surprise of all to me, is that you can make a living watching birds. And for me, it's not really even a career. It's just something I love to do, but I now get paid for it, which is amazing. Yeah, you can go into birding from all kinds of angles. You can go into conservation. You can become a writer. You can study birds scientifically at a university. You can lead tours. Bird watching tours are getting super popular, and people do that full time now. So it's pretty cool to me that many people are interested in birds. And I have to say, one of the greatest benefits of the whole pandemic and 2 years of shutdowns that we all went through is that birding suddenly got even more popular, because people were like, well, the one thing that isn't shut down is nature, and they went outside and started looking at birds. And so there's been this huge surge of interest over the past couple of years, and a whole new crop of birders. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, you do like to send me pictures of birds and things, which is great. Do you have an Instagram account or Twitter or something that people can follow some of the birds that you have seen, that they can sort of scroll through your travels?
Oh yeah, sure. Probably Instagram is the best. It's just my name, @Noah Strycker.
Okay, you mentioned conservation, and Tim, that was something that you wanted to chat about real quick as well, yeah?
Yeah, no, if you don't mind, tell us, what role does conservation play in your work with birds?
Well, I think conservation is such a broad area, and all parts of it are important. When people think about conservation, they think about someone preserving land or doing a captive breeding program to bring back a species or something like that. But it's also getting people interested, because you can't conserve things unless you even know that they exist. And I think that probably is my biggest role, is being out there and just getting people psyched up about birds. And then once you know more about it, then you start to filter into different holes and support conservation projects. For my, on a local level, for my big year, I did a offset program. So all my carbon was offset for my travel that year. And when I came back home, I planted 1,000 trees on this old overgrown pasture at our family property. And so I hope in my own ways I've been able to offset my individual impact. But on a broader scale, yeah, the best advice I can give anyone who's interested in bird conservation is, first and foremost, just go out there and go birding, and everything else will follow from there.
Right, that makes sense. And speaking of conservation, one segment we like to do with a lot of our guests is a segment on hot takes. And we would love it if you would give us your hot take on some of the extinct species of birds that we find really fascinating. And I think that is the perfect tie-in to conservation because obviously some of these extinct species really are a story of lack of conservation. If you're up for that, Noah, let's take a look.
Oh
I have
yeah.
a personal connection to this one because I'm from the deep South. I grew up in Mississippi, and I would spend some time in Memphis. And if you cross the Mississippi River there and you head into Arkansas, at one time there was a billboard that said, "Welcome to Arkansas, home of the ivory-billed woodpecker." And I thought, what is this ivory-billed woodpecker? It looks pretty cool, but I didn't realize the ivory-billed woodpecker is supposedly extinct, but there are potential sightings of this woodpecker. What's your thoughts on the ivory-billed woodpecker?
Well, the ivory bill got super famous in the early 2000s because it was supposedly extinct, hadn't been seen probably in 50 years. And then the Cornell Lab of Ornithology made this big announcement that they had rediscovered the ivory-billed woodpecker in the swamps of Arkansas. And at the same time, another group of researchers from Georgia made a similar announcement that they had rediscovered them in the Florida Panhandle. And I knew those researchers, so I actually called them up after the announcement and said, "Hey, can I come join your search crew to try to get evidence for the existence of the ivory-billed?" And they said, "Yeah,
Oh,
sure, come
wow.
on down." So I went down and I spent 2 weeks in a swamp along the Chattahoochee River Basin with 10
Wow.
other guys in a field camp, spending our days going around in kayaks and chest waders with cameras at the ready and putting out heat sensing cameras and audio recording gizmos and all the rest of it to try to document the existence for this bird. I think personally, after everything I've seen, I don't think there are any ivory bills left. I think
Oh,
it was never known to be a particularly shy or secretive or difficult to find bird. I mean, it's this like huge freaking woodpecker that's black and white and red and has a really loud vocalization. So I think probably they went through a habitat bottleneck around the 1960s when those cypress swamps were logged. And even though some of them have grown back now into what we would look at as great ivory-billed potential habitat, I don't think there are any left.
oh, that's too bad. Another great connection for me with ivory-billed woodpeckers because it has the same habitat as another legendary
I
Arctic
thought you were going to say
creature.
it has the same hairdo.
Hey, that too. I could go red, but the legend of Boggy Creek, right? So this was an infamous movie. They made a movie out of it, a Bigfoot sighting in Boggy Creek, Arkansas, and home of the ivory-billed woodpecker and Bigfoot. So we'll move on from there, though. I think they both might still be out there. I don't think a lot of people know
Maybe they're
really
hanging
much.
out together.
I don't see why not.
Or
Two cryptids
maybe
hanging out.
Bigfoot's been eating the ivory-billed woodpeckers.
That would be sad. That'd be real sad. Maybe the woodpecker's pecking on his, enlarged cranium. So that's more likely. But I don't think a lot of people are familiar much with the passenger pigeon.
Yeah, this is a pretty crazy story to me. At one time, the passenger pigeon was the most abundant bird on the planet. There were billions of them, and they ranged all around various parts of North America. And they were essentially overhunted, and then their population collapsed. I believe the last passenger pigeon, there's no dispute about this one, was died in a zoo in 1914. So
Wow.
it's incredible to me that the most abundant bird species out there could go from flocks of billions all the way to zero in a pretty short amount of time.
That's terrifying.
It really is. It reminds you of like the bison and so many other, stories of the bald eagle, so many other stories. But the passenger pigeon, of course, did not make it out the other side. So this next one, Noah, actually is really close to my heart and CJ's heart because we're both in North Carolina. And I only learned about the existence of this one recently on a trip to the museum with my children. The Carolina parakeet. It just blows my mind that there was once a parakeet living in the Carolinas.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't have the name recognition of like the ivory-billed woodpecker or even the passenger pigeon. So most people don't even know that the Carolina parakeet ever even existed, which, given that it was around recently enough that we have specimens like this picture is showing, I just think is quite poignant and sad. It goes to show how quickly you can lose something and then forget about it and not even know what you've lost.
Right. And back to conservation, I didn't realize, but apparently they went extinct primarily because of fashion, I guess.
Yeah, there was the whole fad for feathers on women's hats to decorate them, and that really hit a lot of birds hard, not just parakeets, but herons and egrets and water birds too. They would even mount like whole birds or wings on the top of hats because they thought that was super fashionable for a while.
Wow.
That's awful.
It really is. But, and again, how awesome would it be, if we could have Carolina parakeets in our backyard? That would be amazing, but
That one.
it was not meant to be. Next up, the legendary dodo.
Yeah, the dodo was a real thing. It was this actual bird. It really looked like that. It lived on
Really? It looked like
Mauritius
that?
Island, and it went extinct a little farther back in time, maybe several hundred years ago, with the first sailors coming to Mauritius and finding these big, fat, tasty birds that couldn't fly and had no fear of predators. So they went pretty fast.
They are
But,
fat. I guess maybe I've never seen a picture of a dodo before. That is not the image I had in my head.
They're
No,
pretty
they had
crazy looking.
evolved to be flightless because they lived on this oceanic island without any predators, and so
Yeah.
they were easy.
I mean, they
pickings for-
almost look like they look like a turkey with a super weird face.
Yeah.
Yeah. They really do. They really look bizarre.
Like if a turkey dressed up for Halloween to be scary.
If a turkey dressed up for Halloween to be scary, I'll remember that. That's a pretty good description of a dodo.
Do you think that's one Halloween idea for this year? Do you think that's one reason why penguins did not befall the same fate? Because penguins just look cool and nobody wanted to eat them?
Well, I think penguins, they were discovered more recently in Antarctica, and so they've had a shorter period of history with people trying to eat them, and they didn't taste as good as
Oh,
far as I've heard. Penguins taste pretty fishy because they mostly eat krill and fish. I heard there's a recipe you can mimic the sound of the taste of a penguin if you take a board and then boil it in diesel oil for a few hours with a chicken breast next to it for flavor, and then throw the chicken breast away and eat the board. That's kind of what a penguin tastes like.
Appetizing.
I'll pass on that. So goodbye, Dodo. But this one, reminds me of the penguin, though, and I do not know what happened to the great auk, but very penguin-like.
Yeah, this was kind of like the penguin of the north in the North Atlantic Ocean around Newfoundland up to Iceland and even in parts of Europe. You had this bird that's not actually related to penguins, but it's an example of convergent evolution where they fulfilled the same niche, so they evolved very similar characteristics. And they were flightless. You can see their tiny little wings were not very good except for swimming. And kind of like the dodo, they didn't have predators around, so they were big and fat and super good eating for the first sailors that encountered them. And the great auk has unfortunately gone the way of the dodo as well.
Right. And Noah, I happened to be lucky enough to visit Oregon this summer. And one bird that I was looking for while I was there was the puffin, which apparently does visit some of the coast of Oregon part of the time. Matter of fact, I noticed some towns even had bragging rights up about, hey, the puffin comes here now instead of San Francisco, for example. But this bird also looks like a puffin to me. Can you tell us what's the difference exactly between a puffin and a penguin and an auk?
Well, a penguin is its own thing. That's a different order of birds that evolved millions of years ago, somewhere by New Zealand. And they're only in the south, so there's never been penguins in the north. But we do have in the northern hemisphere a group of birds that are called the alcids, and that family of birds includes the great auk as well as puffins. So you are 100% correct. Great auks are closely related to puffins, and you can sort of see the resemblance. They don't have the colorful beak, but they have a similar body shape and coloration, and that huge bill for grabbing hold of fish underwater and eating them.
Right. And too bad we don't have the great auk around anymore. Next up, we've got for you this one I'm fascinated by because this thing is huge. We're looking at a picture of a skeleton of a moa, or I think the scientific name may be Dinornithus. Dinornithiformes,
Yeah, you got
and
it.
a picture of the skeleton next to a human, and I mean, it must be 12 foot tall.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine being around a bird that big. What does this photo on the right come from?
You know, this I suspect is a recreation. It shows some like tribesmen hunting one of them, and I suspect it may be some sort of recreation from a museum.
Yeah, because moas have not been around in the age of photography.
Or it'd be a great picture. But yeah, these things, you have to imagine they would have been kind of easy to hunt down there. So this was the moa, and it's too bad it's not around, but man, they would have needed a lot of room to roam. And okay, I think this is our last one for you, Noah. I had to ask, one of our most popular YouTube videos is the video of a purported pterodactyl.
That's right.
Where we analyzed, and I believe that was in California. But of course, there are legendary tales of a giant bird called the Thunderbird. Now, you've been out there a lot, and you mentioned the harpy eagle for one. Are there any real life birds that you think, could be responsible for being mistaken for the legendary Thunderbird, or even for a pterodactyl? Or could these two be out there somewhere?
Well, I've heard of Thunderbirds, but I don't know much about them. Can you just give me a snippet on what the legend of the Thunderbird is?
Well, a lot of native tribes have legend of the Thunderbird. They put them on totem poles and different things, and essentially it was just a giant bird. So very much like the picture you see, or the illustration of, just think a mammoth bird, like 30-foot wingspan, that sort of thing. And apparently they could be seen coming in at night a lot, right? Maybe taking off small children, that sort of thing, animals. So these are the legends. And of course, people will go to the Amazon and look for the Thunderbird, or some people, they think they used to exist in North America, maybe still do. And of course, some people in Amazon say they still have pterodactyl sightings. There was even a pterodactyl sighting in Raleigh, North Carolina recently. So yeah, the Thunderbird, it's just basically a huge bird. I think it's often seen like in silhouette, I think is really what happens. You mentioned the harpy eagle, and it made me think of the Thunderbird, though, because I feel like if you saw something like that in flight, at a particular time of day, at a distance, like, wow, this is a gigantic bird moving through the air.
Well, I think it's appropriate that you put these two images next to each other, because at least scientifically speaking, as far as we know, birds are dinosaurs. They are the last lineage of dinosaurs that actually never died out and kept on evolving over the last 60 million years or so, and now they are what we call birds. There were dinosaurs that had feathers, and some of them didn't make it and some of them did, and became what we now see as birds. So when you're out there looking at birds, you are actually looking at dinosaurs flying around you, and I think that's pretty cool to think about. As far as I know, we don't have pterodactyls around in their format that we normally think of them. They've become something else these days.
You would tell us if you've seen one, right?
Yes, I would definitely not keep that a secret.
All right, so that's our review of some famous extinct birds, and we really appreciate your hot takes on those, Noah.
Once again, Noah, I am just amazed by your amount of knowledge. There was not anything we threw at you tonight that you just didn't have a plethora of information for, which is incredible. I mean, also, I just don't think that you are old enough to have done all of the things that you've done and been all of the places that you've been to say that you spent 2 weeks looking for that bird. I'm like, where did you squeeze in 2 weeks to do that with all of the other things you've done? So clearly there's a lot more to learn about you and the adventures that you have been on, and I'm so thankful that you shared some of them with us today. I do hope that everybody will check out your website. That's noahstrycker.com, NoahStrycker.com. Look for some of your books, some of the other information about you, and you can also learn more about our show and support our show if you go to www.bigfootufo.com. And we sure threw some Bigfoot and UFO questions at you today too, and you handled them like a champ. So a true friend of the show. I hope you'll come back and share some new findings with us. And I also hope that now when you're out and about and you're looking for birds, you're also looking for aliens.
Yes, you have given me a whole new perspective on things to be vigilant about while I'm out in these weird parts of the world looking at birds.
Yeah.
But hey, Noah is the perfect example of the person that can contribute to the field of knowledge in anything like the paranormal, because he's out there collecting data, right? Like he's out there doing the fundamental part of science, which is observation. So Noah, we appreciate you, and you're out there doing work and putting in the hours and observing the things around you. And I think that that's a great thing.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what life is all about.
Truly, you're looking at the sky more than most people. So if anybody's going to see a UFO, it's you.
Yes, it's probably accurate, actually.
Because you probably look at the sky more than most humans ever will. All right, Tim, anything else you wanted to cover before we sign out for the night?
I'm Dr. Mouse. I'm joined by CJ Derringer. You know, it takes a lot to make a podcast happen, but like CJ said, you can help support us by going to bigfootufo.com. Follow us, subscribe, wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching. Hit the like button. Please comment. Please share. It really helps us defeat evil algorithms of Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Matter of fact, we had some glitches with Facebook tonight, so we're only on YouTube and Twitter tonight. Share, subscribe, like, comment, follow bigfootufo.com. We appreciate all of you. We appreciate Noah Strycker for joining us tonight from noahstrycker.com. Check out his website. You can find all his books there and all his other work, his documentaries, his media appearances. Amazing. Noah, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show.
All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We are signing out. We hope that you will stay happy, stay strange, and listen to all things unexplained. Until next time.
Good night, everybody. Thanks. Like, share, follow, comment, subscribe, support. What's your hot take on Travis Taylor?
I've got an exclusive for you guys if you want it about the
Yes,
Alaska.
we do.
Okay.
All things unexplained.
So some of that I think, sir, will save for closed session.